People are being priced out of house and home, leaving people to either shack up together, move to a cheaper place, or straight up pitch up a tent on the interstate. Whichever unfortunate circumstance you fall into, it's not looking too good for the average Joe right now. With there not being all too much help in terms of news headlines, and people are terrified of tariffs right now. So, if you feel like you relate to anything in terms of this discussion, or you just enjoy the topic of the downfall of society, feel free to like, comment your thoughts, opinions below, and subscribe to see my daily uploads around here discussing topics just like this. And a huge shout out to all my supporters who just rock with the content, my channel memberships, and my Patreon supporters. You can check all the details, all that bullshit down below in the description. Now let's begin today's video.
New data claims rent in New York City is too high for 2/3 of Gen Zers. Research from the real estate site StreetEasy found 65.6% of renters ages 18 to...
Think about that. That's 2/3. That's the majority of this younger population, my generation, Gen Z. And to be honest, I do understand that like New York and LA, all these very high populated cities, they're some of the top earners, some of the top cost places of living. But I think this is kind of being experienced throughout the whole U.S., not just these high cost of living areas, but kind of absurd to think about that.
25 spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. The city remains one of the most unaffordable places to live. StreetEasy says the boroughs have a higher share of rent-burdened Gen Zers than at least 18 of the 30 largest metro areas across the country. 72% of Gen Zers living in Staten Island are considered what they call rent-burdened, 68% in Manhattan and the Bronx, 64% in Queens, 62% in...
Rent-burdened. That's a new term. There's always new terms we're always trying to make up, whether that's anti-work, quiet quitting. Now we're talking about rent burden. We are rent-burdened, Gen Z. We're a burden.
Brooklyn.
How are we supposed to buy a house when my rent is going up another $195 a month? It has gone up $720 in 4 years.
That's crazy. $195 a month. Every single time I've ever lived in an apartment, they do go up year by year. I've got very, very lucky around the pandemic where I don't think it went up 1 year, but it did end up going up much more the year after that. So it's a nonstop increase when you're renting out places, and you can never control what the increase is going to be. You just have to kind of sign the lease, you have to continue with the terms, and unless you can find a cheaper place or you have another option, or if you can somehow find a way to break your lease without completely ruining your future, you know, what people are going to think about you to get other places in the future. I don't know. It's getting really rough out there in terms of finding places to live.
The same place that I live in. $8,640 a year more for the same place I lived in 4 years ago. I'm sorry, property taxes are not going up that much that landlords are charging that much more. We had to stop blaming the economy, the government, the president. It is greedy people taking more profits in. When people tell you, just move somewhere else, why would I move to another state that's cheaper? Why should I have to uproot my family, lose my career, just to afford to live somewhere? You're implying people who live in where I live.
That's the thing. I see a lot of comments online saying, stop complaining, just move. You just got to do what you got to do. I don't think it should be necessarily the only option is to have to completely uproot your life, everything you've known. Maybe you've grown up in that area your whole life. Maybe you've built a business in that area. It's not as easy just to completely, you know, up ship and move somewhere else. Now, for some folks, that's probably the best option, and I can definitely see that being the case. If you live in like New York or LA, you probably do want to live somewhere else. I can see many people moving to Florida, Texas, some of these, you know, places with different tax laws and all that type of stuff, but it's not very reasonable to just assume people can even afford to make these types of jumps. I mean, if you can barely afford rent, how are you supposed to up and move like across the country? It's not very reasonable or even really logical of an assumption to make.
Now don't deserve a fair shot at cost of living. And places with cheaper rent pay lower salaries. That's how this whole thing works for the most part. And my girlfriend's a teacher. Like, if she moves to a state with a cheaper cost of living, she might not even have a pension or her benefits anymore. Instead of telling the middle class to keep, like, looking somewhere cheaper, why don't you all align together and get people out of control that are...
That's the thing, man. You never really know what people's situations are. Maybe it's not really a very big possibility to just uproot ship and just jump somewhere else. And even if it really is, I mean, it's not just the lower class getting affected by these types of things these days. The rising cost of living is starting to affect the middle class as well. We're starting to really see this divide now where the middle class is becoming less and less. It's more lower class and higher class. It's really starting to... This is a divide in the times right now, folks.
Doing this to us. You are always closer to being homeless than you are to being rich. Like, everyone just assumes one day they're going to get rich. And that's why they don't stand up for people just like them in the struggle right now. If not for the raise I got 4 years ago, I would be totally screwed. I don't even want a handout or help. I just want things to not be so crazy expensive every year. Like, go buy pizza from where I work. Go buy my merchandise. I don't know. Not a handout, just advertising.
Oh, sorry. Usually I skip past these little. Usually I cut out those little parts at the end of the TikTok thing, but that's insane to think about that. It's very crazy to think about that when he put that into perspective, saying most of us are so much closer to being broke and homeless than being rich and thriving. And it really only is 2 3 months of time of a fall off of your usual routine. Maybe you have a few things happen, life hits you in a different way you didn't really expect. It's completely out of your control, and you're right in these positions like many of these people, many of these folks we cover here on this channel. So it's very unfortunate.
I can afford the $1,000 a month rent. I can put first and last month's deposit down. I have a good credit score, good background record. I also have never been evicted. Yeah, well, you need to make 3 times the rent every month. So, I mean, I make close to it, but I don't make $3,000 plus every month. Well, looks like you can't be here then.
I don't make 3,000 plus a month. Personally, I'm not really making much more than that right now myself. I'm making much lower than that, but that's roughly barely $35,000 a year after taxes and all that, depending on what you do for a living. If you work for yourself, it's definitely below that because you're getting the income tax taken out. But even if you work for a W-2 job or you're working for some sort of fast food place or some sort of convenience store, some sort of like retail location, you're barely bringing in 40K a year, which is still lower than the average income throughout the U.S. And we're talking about a two-person income here because most households have a two people. So when you're talking about like the average income household is like for 50 grand, we're talking about for two different people, not individually. The average individual income is like 40 something thousand, and most people are making much less than that working at these jobs that the majority of people work at.
Hey, Gen Z, us, we're probably all going to have pretty difficult lives. Hard-working lives. They say good times create weak men and bad times create strong men. Look at the Great Depression, how that all worked out, how hard all those guys worked to never have to go through that again. Then boomers inherited the best economy in the world, and they just keep saying, I worked so hard, I worked so hard. No, you didn't, bruh. A year of college cost you $26 in 1971. And the value of the dollar was insane, backed by gold.
Okay, well, the complete inflation of the college pricing for the price of education has gone up an astonishing amount, astounding. It's honestly astronomically ridiculous, and I don't think it's really even reasonable how much education is these days. If anything, the majority of stuff you can learn in college, you can learn online if you know what the right place to look, if you can actually find it. But either way, that's besides the point. In terms of the inflation per cost of living, I really do want to put into perspective because my mom used to always say, "Oh, cigarettes used to be $3 a pack," or I used to get one cigarette for a nickel out of a vending machine for my dad back when I was a kid. That's what my mom used to always say because she's older. She's like in her later 60s, and I do want to put in perspective. Her dad only made about $100 every 2 weeks because the dollar was valued much differently. Now he could afford a 5-person family on $100 every 2 weeks because the dollar was worth so much differently. But now the dollar is so devalued, you really do have to make like 100K a year to really be living lavish, which is ridiculous because most people don't really make that, and most occupations don't really have that sort of a high earning potential.
Every single one. And then they started the credit stuff. So, I mean, look at any boomer man. They're always like, well, blah, blah. Like, for real, we'll have like 73-year-olds throwing tantrums, bro, just because they didn't get their way. And shit's pretty tough right now. I won't lie, for everybody in a lot of ways. And I think it's going to make us all really strong, but it'll be difficult.
Now, I'm not sure if he got into an argument with one of his older generation family members this morning, but that is really the consensus of how a lot of the younger generation do feel about the older generation. They had it much easier, the times are much different, and it's just not really fair. Now, there's an old saying, life's not fair, but when a huge pool of people is getting such a different reality than this other huge pool of people, and these people are telling them how easy it is and how they don't really know how to do it, and these people are saying you guys are so much different. We are in the time of division, guys. The divide of the times is happening right now among us.
Be sitting up thinking to myself sometimes, like, what if being homeless is really being wealthy? And what if paying bills and going to work every day just to make ends meet is really being broke or poor?
Okay, is he spitting? Hear him out.
Because I'm starting to think like, man, we're not supposed to be here paying no bills and working and enslaving away just to be able to pay bills and be able to do nothing afterwards. I don't think that's what's supposed to be going on. But y'all let me know. Y'all let me know in the comments how y'all feel because
Man, just the thought, just the thought of this is making him yawn. It's exhausting. People are tired out here, folks.
it seems like if you got a car, if you got an RV or something, you don't really need no house. It be certain places in the house that you don't need that you ain't been to in months and years. So how
For
much
sure.
space do you really need to have a house? Only reason I say sleeping in the car is bad because of the carbon monoxide. But man, give me an RV or something, a nice RV, and I'll be straight. I don't even need no house.
All right, man's might have figured it out. I mean, I don't. A lot of people are opting out to the RV living in their vehicles, um, and we're just straight up pitching tents outside, living in box. We have box mansions going down the interstate these days, folks. It's getting extreme, and they're gonna start charging them rent. They might even let them stay. But that land, that little piece of land, little 5 by 5 foot, that's not free. That's owned by the city. So either way, I do appreciate you guys' love and support. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions regarding the current housing crisis, the rapid increase of cost of living, and how everything is just seems to be downfalling upon us. And are we currently facing the downfall of Rome 2.0? Is this big empire of the USA just crashing right before us, or are we facing the best economic times to ever be seen before soon enough? That's what everybody keeps saying on the news headlines, but it's usually one of the two. It's never really in the middle. But either way, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. Huge shout out to my supporters around here, my channel supporters, my channel memberships. You can check out these videos before they're accessible to the public. My Patreon supporters, you can DM me personally. We can chatting with Josh one-on-one sessions. And yeah, I do appreciate all you guys' support, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.